All right, so welcome into the live stream today. We're going to be breaking down world events, what has been happening, obviously, in the UK with the Queen and also the new Prime Minister, breaking that down as to the impact on how not only blockchain, but cryptocurrency from a global perspective, now that we are seeing essentially a world leader passing the baton. I think it means a lot in the sense of where Bitcoin will be going, along with other crypto projects as well as blockchain in general. So we'll break into all that good stuff. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. Let's get into it today. There's a lot of stories, obviously, kind of focusing in on a couple things. Obviously, the biggest issue is the Queen's passing. Condolences there. Obviously, there has been some big moves from her that has been kind of lining the path for what's been happening in the UK. Obviously, the energy crisis, one of the biggest issues right now that are really facing what's happening in Europe. If you look at the United Kingdom right now, soaring energy bills, why does this have a bearing on what's going to be happening in the crypto space? Remember, if you follow our channel very much, one of the things that we really dive into is the side of where macro goes. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. So they need to find an answer to these energy bills, which obviously is becoming a big and could become a humanitarian crisis, as they said there in the article. And one of the reasons there, obviously, is because of the flow of gas into the UK, what it means from the EU in general. Many countries will be facing this, including Germany and others, that are all in a very interesting spot right now. We're going to be doing some breakdowns on this a little bit deeper in some macros. I will be bringing some new interviews on to talk about this as well, because it does have huge implications on where cryptocurrency could be going in the very near future. Now, a couple of things that people don't really recognize as much, and I think one consideration is we kind of look at it here. Obviously, we see energy problems in California. We've seen brownouts, rolling brownouts, the issues of lowering the usage at peak times, all those kind of things that are being pointed to. And obviously, as the world shifts to more alternative energy, this is becoming a big factor. We'll be talking about this at our 3 o'clock live today. So make sure and hit your notify button on that, because we'll go into the potential ban on Bitcoin mining in that show for sure, to give you guys a rundown on that. We'll also be doing some cool stuff on sentiment. But back to the point of where this energy crisis is and just how bad it is. Here's an article right here from InWorld talking about this. The average household bill is going up to $35.49, which is about $4,100 from October, versus what we're seeing now, a substantial jump up to around $53.86. That's the pound, and that's the cap is next updated in January. So we're still a little bit of a ways away. This was back when Liz Truss was, of course, the foreign secretary. And why are they so high? So right now it's the price of natural gas. We know where that is stemming from, which Britain uses obviously large quantities to heat homes, generate electricity, and it's at an all-time high in European markets. This is not something new. It's been something that has been in the framework for quite some time. Obviously, the conflict in Ukraine really shifted the table a lot in essence of how Europe was going to be handling this winter. And that's what we're really dealing with right now. And when you look at this winter, many people are saying this has so much effect on where Ethereum and Bitcoin will be going. And if you look at this tweet right here, if trading ETH directionally for the merge, probably want to go along on the event, stops right above the August lows. I kind of agree with this guy, Alex Kruger, and we followed him before. $1,700 break to take price around the 18 to 2100 range, which is something you've heard me say a lot. Obviously, we have the CPI next week, not our CPI, but the actual US CPI next week, to give a little bit more assess. But what he's pointing at is kind of interesting right here. If you follow his tweet further on down, it says, I have very little visibility beyond the event when it comes to Bitcoin and equities into the year end, but can confidently pitch for both longs and shorts, more downside sees. And then he goes on to point out it's likely lies on the shoulder of weather in the UK or in Europe in general. So that in itself points to the whole point that I think Alex Kruger is talking about, which I would agree to this level, is that the amount of energy consumption and needs in the EU, along with obviously the UK being one of the prime stars here, Germany the other, is really going to point to the evolution of the macro effect on our economies, global economies and especially the traditional markets. And obviously that has so much bearing on what could happen here within crypto. So a lot going on, and of course, double rainbow shimmered right here across the crowds there with Buckingham Palace. Obviously, when Queen Elizabeth II's death broke. Sad day for the people in the UK. But also, I think at the same time, she really kind of set the standard for what I think the innovation that could happen in the UK around blockchain and what that means. And for someone, in her years, she had a tremendous amount of insight in understanding what was really happening. Great selections in terms of prime ministers. I know some people will argue Boris Johnson, but the point is that, when you look at the UK, the amount of great things that she did were so numerous. And the aspect around this, when you look at her last speech, Queen's speech, this is, of course, sparking the UK's renewed interest in cryptocurrencies. This was read by her son and now the incoming king. The parliamentary prince, Charles, and the country's cryptocurrency ecosystem is bracing itself for a monumental legislating in the coming months. Obviously, we know what that is from Mika, which we'll talk a little bit more about. But really, in this speech, it is really kind of focusing in on the whole idea of bringing the UK, which will, of course, bring Europe into a position that could really put them in a way of developing innovation centers around blockchain and the evolution of where this is going to be going. So pretty interesting stuff overall. If you look at the extension of the bill to advertisements, so they're talking about protecting people. Let me kind of zoom that up on you. We've talked about this before, the bills on everything from scams. They have really kind of gone in this direction of holding down advertising. Also, further into this, the FCA is holding its first crypto sprint. This is going to see a regulator meet with industry experts. This is going to be fostering collaboration between parties. All this kind of pointing in the direction of good for blockchain and I think the next generation of technology. Now, the interesting thing was that the Queen, of course, one of her last acts of the monarchy was to address Liz Truss as the new prime minister. And that, of course, is being met with some very interesting aspects around the fact that Truss is very crypto friendly. So she's shown indicators around that the UK needs to lead the way. It's interesting, too, by just the numbers of our audience. We have a ton of audience in London and in the UK. It's one of our largest markets for this show and for our network. And rightly so, I think, in the sense because there's so much happening there. Now, she obviously is kind of set with one of her biggest challenges right now. When you go back to the article, confronted with enormous task ahead of her of increasing pressure to curb soaring prices. Typically, this is geared around the issue around energy. And again, this is what I think is a potential for the trigger to cause a global macro event, is when you look at countries that are on the brink of a problem, a real problem. When you look at the United States, we don't necessarily are on the brink. Sure, we know certain things are happening. We're making some moves, trying to make some changes to address these, but we have not seen a country really go through a winter where we see hardship on its citizens. And that is what I think will change the macro environment in a very big way. So this could be pretty bad because it will really separate the classes in a big, big way. So that in itself is something I'm watching closely. If you look at one of her tweets, and I would suggest to start to follow this leader because we are going to see a lot of movement from here. But she's saying here she's going to deal with hands-on the energy crisis, take action, not sure people are facing unforgettable energy bills, and secure our future and energy supply. This will be interesting as to how the UK is going to deal with this without the sanctions, because the Western world obviously putting sanctions on Russia, Russia being the core supporter and provider of gas to the European Union and to especially the United Kingdom, could become a pretty big issue here for sure. Further into this, the UK Economic Secretary also commits to making country a crypto hub under the new Prime Minister. And again, this is something that I think is a really, really good sign for Europe unfortunately, could be a great thing for Europe, because Europe could end up in a very interesting spot here of taking kind of the global stage of controlling what could be the next generation of monetary assets being formed around the world. This is in a parliamentary debate on crypto asset regulation in the UK on Wednesday. Fuller spoke in favor of powerful use cases for cryptocurrency and blockchain tech using distributed ledger, all based on areas around, everything from medical records. Obviously, we'll see this in international trade. Obviously, we'll go down the direction of all things tokenized. Further, they talk about the crypto technologies growing in significance in the UK. Government are also seeking ways to achieve global competitive landscape, which I think is another thing as they start to play into this. And then really what kind of brings it home is we want to become the country of choice for those looking to create and innovate and build in the crypto space. By making this country a hospitable place for crypto technologies, we can attract, invest, generate new jobs, they get it. They get it. They understand what is happening right now around the world. It's pretty amazing to me that we are not seeing this kind of, message coming from DC right now. Instead, we're looking at, hey, let's, Biden's issue is let's look and let's assess, and then let's do this and let's do that. Let's really don't, and there are so many special interest groups kind of paving the way. We'll talk a lot about that on the 3 o'clock and why this is important. But I think the fact that the UK has already kind of put forth the leader that would need to be in place, if she pulls a hat out of the bag here for the issue around energy, she's going to become the star of Europe. And when you have the star of Europe, which I think this is a very critical point in her early career, if she pulls this off for the citizens of the UK, gets them through this winter with whatever deals she has to do or make, this will be an interesting aspect of how she's going to be looked at on the European stage, which will lead out what I think will be the EU in terms of international policy. So it's going to be pretty interesting stuff. Here's another thing right here. Liz Truss obviously wins the UK election. Positive result for crypto adoption. Just more, she just looks like she kind of knows what she's doing. And she's like, listen, I got this. Hold my beer. This is a good one. Liz Truss wins it. And she kind of went right ahead, because this was a tough one right here with Rishi Sunak, who was, I expected to be one of the leaders to actually become the prime minister. So this movement right here by the Queen, I think, was a very interesting play on how this all will play out on crypto. And you can kind of see some of the things here. Her support emerged in 2018. She goes back when she said that crypto should be welcomed without restriction. Let me kind of zoom in on that for you guys, in its potential. And latter in 2020, while she was trade minister, said that she wanted the US and the UK to lead in areas like artificial intelligence and blockchain. So those are the two areas I think are very critical in terms of technology. You know my background. I'm a big technologist, and one thing that does not change, and that is the evolution of technology. It's always moving forward. Whether we like it or not, it's going to be here, and it's going to lead us into really kind of the next generation. And I think the countries that really understand this are going to have an advantage. And it's kind of like when you look back the invention of and the evolution of the internet, of the open internet versus AOL, and what Prodigy and all those closed systems were. They were pretty much really isolated into the US. And the open internet really put the United States on the map. It put Silicon Valley in as the leading facility in terms of really bridging the gap of technology and innovation. It also became the target, the bullseye for places like China, trying to go after everything from technology secrets and advancements in innovation. That is the kind of target zone I think that the UK might be in chase of. So very interesting stuff. Further stuff that she talked about here, I wanted to kind of bust into a tweet she said right here. And there's the tweet right there, all the way back into 2018. Look at that, January 30th, 2018. We should welcome cryptocurrencies in a way that doesn't constrain their potential, liberate free enterprise areas by removing regulations that respect prosperity. This to me is foresight. And while many countries and leaders are either at odds with themselves and divisiveness are occurring, you have global leaders starting to emerge. And this is something I've talked about before. We're going to start to see a new crop of leaders. And this next layer of leaders coming into running these countries, major corporations, and initiatives, I think are going to create a new shift in the powers at be, which will start to possibly change the economic zones of what could be the world reserve currency. And that's going to be a big one that is really going to be up for grabs, I think, in the next decade. So lots happening. Now, here's 5 ways that the UK can or may become a crypto hub under Liz Truss. And when you look at some of the things they kind of focus in on, one of the areas that I think when you consider this is international trade. Let me kind of zoom in on that for you guys to see that. Is the state for international trade. She obviously spoke about blockchain technology and why that is going to be such a scenario, but it will start to create what could become a world-leading data and digital agreement. So this is underwriting data flows, but also dealing with issues like blockchain and artificial intelligence, thereby making sure that we in the US are leading. This goes back to her point. You also look at some of in the recent years, many firms, crypto firms, have been exiting Britain after failing to meet the UK's financial conduct. That's the FCA. And then now she's looking at what I think will be trying to attract those companies back in or getting new companies in to really start the innovation side of things. So definitely one to watch very closely here. There was another area down here I wanted to focus in on, and this is, if I can find it. Yeah, so, okay, so right here is BlackRock using a UK crypto firm for institutional investment. This gets back into something that we will be talking about soon, and that is the evolution of MiCA, which is the new, basically the new agreement by the European Union that is going to control digital assets and what that might mean for the future here. So a lot of this really kind of pointing in the direction of where she is leaning, and that is the fact that we are going to see a lot different UK when it comes to digital assets and really kind of the cornerstone of what, and they have been for the most part, the cornerstone of the EU outside the Brexit issue. But I think we're going to see a new face on the EU that is really going to start to change things around. You've got a shift, obviously, with the king. You obviously have new leadership in place, and you have something that is very needed, and that is a crisis. And crises usually pull people together or it breaks them apart. I have a feeling this leadership will pull them together. If she solves it, big one for her. A little bit more here I wanted to get to because there was a couple other things. The most popular crypto in the UK isn't Bitcoin or Ethereum. I was kind of surprised at this. I'd love to get you guys' feedback. Which one do you think it is? You know, just type it in the comments. Make sure and leave some questions over there. We'll try to get to as many as we can. And make sure and like the video because this is one of the things that really helps us understand. Do you like these deep dives that we do with our research team, or are you interested more in interviews? Do you like the analysis, the sentiment data? Love to kind of get your feedback on that. When you look at what the most popular coin was, it's Shiba. This is the most popular coin in Europe. And then it received equal parts of fanfare when it launched in mid-2021. Obviously, that was right around the Doge, etc. I was kind of surprised at this, but it's at the same time, it's kind of fun to see the fact that we've got a variety of altcoins that are really at play here, even though we will see some movement here. Question will be whether Shiba and others like it will be at play when we go into the next bull run, which I think a lot of people are asking that question right now. I was looking at a tweet this morning that I felt like it made a lot of good points on the fact that it was really kind of talking about what tokens would be really starting to position for the bull run on the next cycle. Remember, a lot of these tokens took big runs, whether it was Cardano, everything from Solana. Obviously, we saw Doge in its time, along with Avalanche and many others that really had a big run. I think there's going to be a new set of tokens here that will start to see this really move. ETH might be one of them that really starts to kind of change the dynamic here. A lot happening around that as well. Now, when you look at the fact that we've seen this major shift in governance and leadership there within the UK, you have to look into the EU. And this is where it gets important. EU's MiCA crypto law, this is what they're saying is basically the copy is going to be ready in about 6 weeks that will start to outline the agreements that they've come to around crypto. There's some pretty key things here that are interesting. One I want to kind of focus in on is they reached an agreement, it's the main outline on the legislation, which will require crypto asset providers to register with regulators to offer services on the block. And this is by June 30th. And within this, the finer points such as whether the rules will apply to non-fungible. Right now, they've kind of subset where NFTs are not included, even though some people are indicating that it may end up being included. But it is set to create parameters for how each European Union's nations regulate crypto. Again, nations within the European Union. So I think that is going to be a big one for the UK. The German politician who led the negotiations for the EP on MiCA told an online panel, basically says, listen, the technical work is still underway and the law will only start to apply about 18 months. But a lot of this, if you've got a law that's starting to evolve, once this is set in motion 18 months out, what does that mean? You've got 18 months of innovation that will start, and there'll be companies, variety of different types of initiatives in terms of, from an innovation standpoint, that will start to look to these areas. So he's basically saying in 4 to 6 weeks, text will be ready. We should have something ready to present. One of the things that is going to be a category provider here is the 15 million active users would be subject to supervision at the European level. So that's going to get in all the big guys. And then you've got a couple other things. We decided to leave NFTs out of the law unless they resemble conventional financial assets. And then his remarks contrast with those of the EC officials who basically suggested that the carve-out's narrow enough, but in practice that most NFTs will fall under the law. So I think there's still some push and pull on this in where this might go. And Patrick Hansen, who we've had on the show before, he was actually quoted in this article right here, and something he noted here I thought was interesting. If the NFTs are part of the collection or series to be regulated, Hansen said, when you look at the current NFT market, this is the vast majority, about 95% or more. So his anticipation is that NFTs would most likely make it into MiCA in terms of regulation. But the fact that they are on the verge of a regulatory guideline is huge for Europe. If this goes in a way in which at least you know the rules to where there are regulatory requirements and we start to see this, then you have countries who have the appetite to try to develop on this innovation around blockchain, like the UK. That, I think, is a very good position for where the industry is going. Now, the one thing that may not be good is when you look at the EU's crypto lobby to fight MiCA's limits on the US dollar stablecoins. Now, this is a big deal because part of this whole MiCA thing is they're going to be limiting the amount of dollar-backed stablecoins that can be used. So back to the article here, it says the lobby associations, this is for crypto, seeking clarity from the legislators over incoming restrictions on foreign-dominated stablecoins. That's the US dollar, all right? Dollar-pegged stables may not be able to be blocked, or may be able to be blocked in the European Union's 27 countries if the bloc's new markets in crypto, obviously MiCA, legislation enters into force in its current form unless they make some changes to move in this. Now, a lot of you might say, well, hey, Paul, Circle has this thing around the European USDE for the euro. This would possibly ban Tether, Circle's USD coin, as well as Binance, BUSD. We just did a video on this. And then the three largest stablecoins, obviously, those are the big boys. Now, with all that being said, you think, well, okay, if they're doing this, if Circle is coming in with a essentially a USDE, they would be safe, right? Well, the problem is that they're issuing this, and I think I pulled up this article here. Let me see if I've got it. But basically, they issued this in, I think it might be right here in this one. Let's see if this is it. Yeah, right here. So Circle's new euro stablecoin issued from the US and outside the EU. The problem is that its initiative is through a US bank. Let me zoom in on that for you guys right there. So Circle has been choosing to issue the stablecoin through a U.S. bank. That will be the big question mark, which will be, this means that the EU's framework on crypto assets, so-called MiCA, might not apply automatically as soon as it's in place. We'll see how that one falls in. So Circle could be in, could be out in terms of a stablecoin, because there really isn't a solid stablecoin in place just yet. There's a handful of them out there. One of them that is out there right now is the pound token, which is a stablecoin tied to the British pound. This was launched by Blackfridge. Again, very young, and much like when you see some of these stablecoins when they start in that. But remember, we're starting to look at now regulatory guidelines. Once you see regulatory guidelines go in place and you see a country with the appetite to make this happen, then you can start to see innovation really start to trick over. And that will be, I think, interesting, because I think Binance will get into the game. Obviously, Circle's already showing their hand. And obviously, I think Tether at some point will really push to this as well, to really start to move to a euro-backed stablecoin. If that occurs, remember, global macro is the shift of the world reserve currency. If we see that in our lifetime in the next 10 years, this will really get into play because of what's happening right now in Europe. So you've got all this pressure from an economic standpoint because of the energy prices, the gas issues, and obviously the unrest there within the European Union. And you have a shift in leadership. Then you apply new regulation. Those are the things that start to set the framework and the groundwork for the next level of innovation and advancement by countries. None of that is really going on right now in the United States. And that is something that is not good for the U.S., especially with the light of President Biden's most recent findings and potential ban on Bitcoin mining. We're going to be covering that in our 3 o'clock live stream today for sure. Also, if you guys, we're going to get to some questions. I know we have a poll coming up here. So let's take a look at the poll real quick. All right. So is the UK Prime Minister Liz Truss good for crypto? Yes. No, not sure. I'm in the yes, guys. I feel like she showed her hand early enough in 2018 in a position in which she had power and control. It wasn't as if she was trying to win a position. She was already in that role of trying to develop a new economic standard for the UK. And the fact that she showed that, I think, is a good thing. Let's get over to some questions today. New World Disorder. I like your YouTube handle. Anything that youth wants to see or have wield most traffic. That's why Shiba and Robinhood became such a big deal. The kids were involved. Yeah, of course. And I think you're right. You've got a lot of under 30 investors, and you've got a lot of those that are really tied into kind of the future of where all this is going. And I think the next big generational shift will be in the 30-somethings as we get into all of that good stuff around this. So I don't think the altcoins are going to be going away for sure. I also want to thank our sponsor today, guys, and that is Bybit. There's a huge trading program that Bybit is doing that launched here for September 9th through the September 30th. It's the ETH Trading Fiesta. You've got a trading competition going on, ETH derivatives, 300K in USDC prize pool. You also have pairs going on with another 700K in USDC prize pool, and an ETH perpetual airdrop. Deposit 1,000 and get 1,000 in perpetual airdrop. So some cool stuff. Check out our link below. We'll leave it in the description so you guys can use it. We may have some cool giveaways coming up from Bybit as well, so make sure and stay tuned for those as well. Back to questions, because I do want to get into some of these. There's some really good ones too. Extendent, is Bitcoin at risk? Or Michael, let's go with Michael Keys. Is Bitcoin at risk because of the energy issue around the world, Europe, etc.? Yes, in short, it is. The scenario that we're dealing with, energy crisis around the world, leans into what many of us know as kind of the position of a shift into renewables. Because of the shift into renewables, mainly led by Europe and the United States and China, ironically, China actually one of the cleanest countries out there in terms of EV adoption, all that good stuff. But the point is with that happening in the G7s, the push on clean mining is going to be real. And because of that, it's one of the biggest reasons that Ethereum is doing a merge. You can talk about, the tokenomics. You can talk about the aspect of it's not going to speed up, it's not going to lower gas fees, but the one thing it will do is lower its footprint and its carbon emissions, and that is huge. It's going to reduce it by like 99.9%, which right now would make it almost as efficient, if not more efficient, than Solana. I'll break that down for you guys, so I do think it's going to be a big one. Dylan Mulligan, some countries would ban mining, but China did the mining increase. Yeah, so remember that China owned the mining market until they made it illegal. And again, it was more so around the fact that China was not after the energy control, because most of that was being done, I think over 50% was being done by renewables. It was more about the control of the digital yuan and the fact that they didn't want a competing currency being mined, currency, store of value being mined in China. So that was one of the big ones. Darren Burke, will Ethereum flip Bitcoin due to mining changes for Ethereum? Very well could, especially if we start to see pressures on Bitcoin around mining in the United States. Still hash rate, I think it's around 35% right now, global. US leads it. I'll show you guys some cool stuff in our 3 o'clock that really breaks that down for you. But I think, yes, you are correct. Ethereum could end up being in a very good position for this. So be on the watch out for that. Over to Philip, says she stands for precisely nothing. Her views change depending on who pays her the most. If the banking sector payers spread FUD about crypto, she'll do it. She's far right, and okay, well, that's nice. Love your love your statement there. Some people. Okay, how did that get on screen? Yeah, all right. Well, and we go on. Kryptonian, they will achieve nothing. How do we let stupid people get in the comments? That's what I want to know. Even if you don't agree with someone's opinion or even their politics, I just don't, I have yet to call some of our politicians morons. I've called them, I don't agree with them. We'll get into that on another day. Dylan Muglin, Algo the most green. Yes, definitely. Algorand is a big one. We talked to Sean Ford over there. Good video if you guys want to see a big one. It really breaks down Algorand. And Algorand, I think, is an important altcoin in the future, and it has the potential to be doing something very cool. So watch for Algorand. I know it moves slow and easy, but it is one of our favorite tokens. It's one of my favorite tokens, and I do like it as a long term. I'm UK-based watching right now. Thanks, Dean. Appreciate it. UK is much more nimble since leaving the EU. Yeah, definitely. With Brexit, you guys are in a much better place, and I think you're right. Joey is thinking that the CPI numbers will be bullish and Bitcoin will revisit the 200-day 23K region. That's a good possibility, Joey. When we were running our sentiment data, we drop it 3 times a week. We actually had our predictor that happened on Wednesday that had Bitcoin going up. Obviously, Thursday night, we saw the pump, and now today we're seeing those kind of numbers coming in. Bitcoin, we'll show some sentiment on the 3 o'clock show for you guys so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But yes, you're right. I think we do have a potential here for some interesting movement. Leighton, the UKB will find in Europe is going to feel the pinch. Yes. And then, yeah, I think you're right, Colin. King Charles is a climate activist and knows climate change, well, okay, is real, but it's whether you believe that it's man-made or climate change is real, or don't want to get into any of that, but I do agree that I think all people would agree that we need to reduce emissions, and that's just something that's natural with the amount of people that are on this planet, that we have to somehow start to really, consider those kind of scenarios. And if we are talking about a monetary system that is using natural sources, granted, when you look at other industries much greater than Bitcoin mining that are being, most likely we're going to see this hitting a lot of industries. Obviously in transportation, we see this. That's why you're seeing a big move, I think, in the EV space. You're also going to see this in the banking industry, ironically. You're also going to see this in the medical industry, pharmaceuticals, manufacturing, all those kind of areas that actually are the real culprits of where most of energy is consumed. Most energy being consumed by coal and natural gas. So that is one of the big factors, which obviously is the fossil fuel side. It's the argument against Bitcoin mining. All that definitely for sure. We're going to break down all of that good stuff for you guys because it's coming up next in our 3 o'clock show, in our live stream. If you'll click that notify me button on our YouTube page, It'll give you a little pop-up and say, hey, we're live, and you can jump in on that show, catch a whole bunch of good stuff. We've got a lot going on around Cardano, around Solana, what's happening with Bitcoin, what this may trend into. Is Bitcoin making its run? And is Ethereum on the move right now? All of that coming up at our 3 p.m. If you guys are listening to us on the podcast, make sure and jump over here to the YouTube channel. This is a place to come. It's also where we do deep dive interviews. We do a lot of these kinds of breakdowns with a little bit more investigative reports, as well as our analysis, where we do breakdowns on the charts and our sentiment data. All that's right here on the YouTube channel. Really easy to find us. If you guys want to catch me, it is out there on Twitter at Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.